Have you spoken to Andrew since all this came out? No. When stuff like this happens, I usually have a rule of thumb not to talk to the individuals. I mean, I guess that could change, but usually I try, especially if I'm not like, especially if it's not something that happened like in my vicinity, in my circle, or anything like that. Obviously, I will try to not talk to the perpetrator specifically because I want to be completely unbiased in my assessment of the situation. So no, I did not. I think it would be inappropriate of me to basically get like a one-sided assessment of the situation. I would rather have people who are being accused of actions, openly state their piece for everyone to see. Ethan was talking about this situation as well, but the first accusation is definitely not good. You know what I mean? It's like pestering, you're pushing, and then ultimately get consent, which still, without the other person's accounts, it looks like it was pestering and coercive. Okay. And in a lot of instances, people do that because they have either past trauma or they do that because they are fearful of what the other party might do. You know what I mean? That's like, there are very valid reasons as to why women eventually offer consent. Okay. Now, especially when you pair that up with like physical actions, you all of a sudden get into a territory of, you're behaving in a really way. Okay. Now, a lot of women have experienced things like this, right? If you have any girlfriends, a lot of women have been through similar situations where like they might not even in that moment think that it was like weird or wrong because they're so used to it, right? And then later on they're like, oh, this was actually like weird. No wonder I feel weird about the situation. So that much I understand. And I think that that kind of like that instance deserves more information. Instances like that require more information. But once you establish a pattern of repetitive behavior, as I've said so many times, like I don't have a checklist, but I do look for certain things whenever there's assault or impropriety, like any kind of like Me Too, post-Me Too era accusation. There are a couple things I look at, okay? And one of them is a pattern of repetitive behavior, like repeat offenses. That's why I always tell you, like, when this kind of stuff happens, I always tell you, like, look, there were more people will come out usually. The second girl had, like, no motive to lie. She has no social platform, can only lose, which backs up her claims, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, even if you have a social platform, it doesn't matter. You usually have a lot to lose, regardless. Let's hear what Ethan had to say.
It's for the men to protect themselves and to protect the women. I'm saying you got to meet someone, get to know them a little bit, make sure that you're both sober and that you've got enthusiastic
I mean, this take like almost attacks the concept of like casual sex or like hookups and shit like that. And in fact, that can be done in a very fun way. I'm not anti casual sex. I'm not anti like hookup culture or anything like that. If you're famous though, no, even if you're famous, like it doesn't matter.
Consent. Because it's just not worth it. I don't think a lot of these guys doing this necessarily want to be hurting people, right? I think they get caught up in the moment. I think they probably have a lot of regrets about how they acted. I don't know, though. Maybe I'm assuming too much. I don't know, right? I don't know how these people feel or what they think about. But I do know that there's a lot of victims of women.
Am I crazy? Does Ethan kind of sound reactionary here? Like the conservatives who are like, what are the rules? Man, that's not a conservative take. Why are we like giving conservatives any kind of grounds to make it seem like they have reasonable assessments here? Not understanding consent is one thing, okay? But like literally you're talking about a conversation, like interpersonal communications between a man and a woman that are strangers to one another. That is an insanely complex situation, okay? Of course, there are so many different dynamics. Like, no, Ethan is not being reactionary when he says, what are the rules? Or conservatives aren't even being reactionary when they say, what are the rules? There are obviously instances where, like, it's pretty obvious. When someone says no, that means no, okay? That is a rule. That's like a pretty basic rule.
Who are in the wake of these famous men being traumatized, being abused, having lots of regret, being coerced. So what do we do about it? I mean, if you're a famous man coming up, you can't do it. I mean, it's too risky. I think the dynamic of you being famous and powerful and then being a fan and knowing who you are, it's too powerful of a combination. So like, you can't exploit that. It sucks, right? It sucks because you can't go out there and be a rascal and everyone, you know what I mean? But, which is like apparently the dream of men. That's why they become famous. I didn't know that. I mean, I know that there's like dudes out there, but I find that odd that like you become famous just for that. It's just like, okay, bro, that's really it. That's all there is to life.
I think that's just young men.
You're not getting away with it. Take them out to dinner.
I think one of the things that happens so frequently for a lot of dudes is that like they're weird nerds, okay? Me Too was created as a movement because the actual like institutions of power were built by men oftentimes to basically violate whatever boundaries they other people would want to have. So because these institutions, including courts, including the police force, were not doing enough to like combat sex crimes, people took it to their own hands, okay, into the public square. And what happens when people take matters into their own hands? There's a pendulum swing. And sometimes that pendulum swings to the insane, completely opposite end of that spectrum. And it happens every time. There are always, if you look at it now, it's not like a rule or anything, okay? But usually what happens is like someone very reasonable and very valid is getting called out, okay? And, you know, they'll even get criminal punishments, like in the case of Harvey Weinstein. Then a bunch of others come out, okay? And a lot of those are also valid. Almost all of them are valid. And then we get to the points where it's like, it moves into like the area of people being like, oh, we went on a date and like, we kissed, we made out, and at the time I thought it was fine, but like now I don't feel like it's okay. You can say it's a bad take all you want, but with Aziz Ansari, that's basically what happened. And that was, in my mind, when that first happened, in my mind, it felt like it was a culture shift where it was like, this is the new rule. These are the new boundaries. And I think that's a valid thing to ask for, okay? Demanding or expecting enthusiastic consent is understandable, okay?
Get to know them a little bit. And then when you got guys who travel around, right? Who go city to city. I don't know, man. Off. I don't know. Just beat off, bro. Get some hotel porn.
Yeah, I don't think this is just about being horny. That's the difference. I think that it's like, I think men are taught from an early age to just like, be aggressive, go after what you want, shoot or shoot, that sort of thing. And like, there is validity to that statement, but I think like people don't know how to control themselves. People don't know how to conduct themselves in this situation, especially paired up with like culture, which used to be way worse in my opinion, especially paired up with like a sense of entitlement that people have. I mean, there's so many different flavors of what I'm basically talking about, all the way to like brutal, or what Harvey Weinstein did, for example, even though his dick was literally mangled as a consequence of having gangrene on his, that was a power thing. That was control. It can sometimes be about just straight up control. It's not just like letting out your sexual desires. You know what I mean? I think when we think about other situations, other instances, like some of the Andrew Callaghan accusers and what he did in the way he conducted himself in some of those interactions, in and of itself is not necessarily about power, but more so about constantly and consistently being reinforced by never facing a level of accountability, I think, and thinking that is like the modus operandi, the normal way to operate, the normal way to behave. Maybe he realizes it's bad, but he still does it. Ultimately, it doesn't matter, because what matters is the trauma that you're inflicting on people.
I know it's expensive, but you're rich. Hell, even get a prostitute. Well, I think that's fine, right? I mean, at least you know what's going on there if you hire a prostitute. I don't know what the solution is, but what's happening right now is not working. It is not working. So I don't know if this was a crazy tweet. Is this a crazy thought or a sane thought? What do you guys think? Because I'm getting sick of seeing this happening. I'm getting sick of seeing people that I did
Sex is
respect.
also framed as a game in which men have to convince women to so no means no, it means try harder in their minds, which is incredibly. Yeah, another part of this reality, another part of this dynamic also revolves around the fact that like women are basically sheltered and pushed aside. And while objectification happens, it's never on women's terms. Like women are objectified; they're seen as objects of desire. But people don't even think about or consider that they want to too. Women are horny, okay? But unfortunately, from early on, women, for the most part, are taught that they are not supposed to be horny, that they're not supposed to control. They're supposed to just behave a certain way, and that paired along with like all the shit experiences that they have early on, and this is something that you hear all the time, constantly having to endure that in a society also pushes you, obviously will leave you having your guard up all the goddamn time. One thing that I've always described to people is like for men specifically who, and I grew up at a time when like, I grew up in a time in a culture where like the consent conversation was at the forefront, even before the Me Too era, where people were like, "Oh, you should always ask for consent." And people considered that to be weird. Okay, people were like, "Well, like I'm just gonna ask for consent." And one thing that truly helped me understand it, okay, especially after I became fully active, was that if I'm on a date with a girl, okay, and we go back home, and the girl says, "Can I suck, please?" Is that really going to turn me off? No, of course not. Of course, it's not going to turn you off. That's insane. That is something that people could not comprehend at the time, like when they were asking for enthusiastic consent, because there is a fear of rejection, okay? But like if the moment is right and you ask openly for consent, they are not going to get turned off by it. That was like a legitimate fear that a lot of men had, okay? It's fear that I even had, but that was also because I was truly active. You know what I mean? So I didn't understand it. Put yourself in the shoes of the other person. You go back home and you ask for consent. You go back home and they ask for consent. You're gonna be very excited at the prospect. Okay?
Somebody's got to figure this shit out. But it's not, shit is changed. It's different now. You can't go out there and just everybody. I think men need to realize like what a powerful thing sex can be. Like, you have to respect the power and the emotional connection that happens there, and how violated somebody can feel who like offered you up their body in that sense, only to be kind of like discarded or used or to regret it. There needs to be some understanding of that. And I'm not being a prude, right? Like, I'm cool with casual sex. I'm not like a puritanical. I don't think people need to get married or anything. I mean, on the first date, I don't care. I'm just saying there's a specific issue with famous men because there's a magnetic pull that you need to be accountable for and that you need to treat with a special care.
Yeah,
so in a way,
maybe
this isn't a good analogy, but like,
sure.
If you're a trained martial artist, world champion, you know what I mean? Like 3-time black belt, you know how to kill a man with one punch. If you get into a bar fight, you cannot unleash your full fury, because if you go for like a neck throat punch and they end up dying, guess what? You're going to jail. Whereas if it was someone who was untrained, you could, go crazy. You're not going to kill the guy, right? You can fight with all your passion. You don't have to worry about holding back. But if you have the potential to kill someone, you know how to do it, and you can do it easily.
He said it. These rules only apply to rich, famous people. These regular viewers do not need to ask for consent verbally, and it can be agreed upon. Bro, that's crazy. Like, I'm not even saying that, like, obviously you have to ask for consent every single step of the way, like a checklist, okay? Like, certain things you can comprehend, okay? But if you can't, you definitely should ask.
You don't do it, right? And that's common knowledge of people who are highly trained martial artists. They know that. And in a way, again, I don't know if this is a stupid analogy, but it's kind of the same thing, right? If you're famous and powerful and you go out.
I think some chatters just don't comprehend and process what you say, and they just watch with hate. Yes, a lot of people have preconceived notions of what I'm saying because they've already put me in this like narrowly defined box. I am a woke lord. I am a soy facing SJW or whatever the. So they're not arguing against me or the positions that I'm presenting to them. They're arguing against positions that they think I have. Okay. And this also happens with leftists that watch me as well.
You have this edge. You have this magneticism. You know, people are going to be more pulled to you, especially fans of yours. And so in the same way, you got to be careful with what you've got there. Does that make sense? What do y'all think? Is it crazy? I don't know. You know what I mean? What I do know is this is one shot, one take. I'm going to upload it to my channel. And if y'all got a problem with it.
No one is like saying that you can't infer consent, okay? Or body language is like meaningless in this conversation. Of course it's meaningful, okay? It's done. The video's done.